It's a nice sunny Sunday and you're out at the backyard grill cooking a steak. You did everything right. You bought a good cut, a well-marbled ribeye because you already know by now that's the one that's hard to ruin. You checked the chart, medium rare, somewhere around 130 to 135 degrees, 54 to 57 Celsius. You used an actual thermometer, not the poke it and guess method your uncle swears by. You hit the number right on the nose, and it still came out overcooked, so either your thermometer is broken or that chart set you up. Because here's the thing, every number on the chart might be exactly right, and it can still walk you straight into an overcooked steak. Stick around, because by the end I'll tell you exactly how that's possible, and exactly what number you should actually be pulling your steak off the heat at, for whatever doneness you're chasing. Quick bit of context before we get into it, because it's relevant to why you should listen to me on this one. Before this channel, before marketing, I actually worked as a chef for a stretch during my MBA study abroad in the UK. Mostly steaks at, of all places, an Asian restaurant, which is its own story for another day. So when I tell you the chart isn't lying about its numbers, it's because I've burned enough of these myself to know exactly where people go wrong. Let's start with the part you probably already know. Steak doneness chart. Quick recap. You've probably seen this part before. Let's move through it fast this bit. To be fair to the chart, everyone already gets right. Blue rare, barely warmer than room temperature, red edge to edge, texture like it's still deciding whether to be alive. Around 115 to 120 degrees, 46 to 49 Celsius. And yes, before you ask, it's completely safe to eat, if properly prepared. Rare. Red center, warm all the way through, soft. Around 120 to 130 degrees, 49 to 54 Celsius. For people who want the full beefy flavor but aren't quite brave enough to go all the way to blue rare. Medium rare. Pink center, firmer crust, juices running clearish pink. 130 to 135 degrees, 54 to 57 Celsius. My order, and honestly most people's order, which is exactly why we're going to build the rest of this video around it. Medium. Mostly pink, tightening up, noticeably less give. 135 to 145 degrees, 57 to 63 Celsius. Medium well. A thin strip of pink if you're lucky, mostly gray-brown, firmer still. 145 to 155 degrees, 63 to 68 Celsius. Anything past medium, and I'm personally out, but that's a preference, not a rule. Well done. Cooked through, no pink left, firm. 155 degrees and up, or 68 Celsius and up. Not my order, but if that's yours, pregnancy or health reasons included, genuinely no judgment here. Anything beyond well done is either overcooked or burnt. And if you like your steak absolutely charred on the outside and still red in the middle, that's the black and blue, sometimes called Pittsburgh style. A screaming hot open flame instead of a pan, so the outside gets nearly burnt, while the inside is raw as a blue rare. That's the chart. Color, temperature, done. Simple enough that it feels like it should just work. So why does following it exactly so often still land you somewhere you didn't want to be? What actually decides the outcome? Turns out there are 4 things fully within your control that quietly move the result. Plus one you're probably not accounting for at all, and that one's the whole reason we're here. We'll get to it. First, the 4 factors you can actually do something about right now. Thickness. A thin steak and a thick one, cooked the exact same way, off the exact same chart, simply do not behave the same. A thick cut's core heats up slowly while the crust is forming outside, which gives you a wide window to actually hit your target cleanly. A thin cut has almost no runway at all. The outside and the center are close enough together that you can jump an entire doneness level in about the time it takes to get distracted by your phone. Same numbers on the same chart, a completely different margin for error, just based on how thick the cut on your board happens to be. Method and pan. How you're actually applying heat changes how fast and how evenly that number arrives. A heavy cast iron or carbon steel pan holds onto heat and sears aggressively, which is fantastic for the crust, but it can race straight past your target before the center's even caught up. A thin pan, an uneven stove, one side running hotter than the other, all of that changes how evenly your steak is cooking, chart or no chart. A thin non-stick pan is the worst to cook a steak on, as it lacks the thermal mass and forces you to cook it longer just to get the color, which ends up overcooking the middle to gray. And there's a whole other approach worth knowing about. Cooking it low and slow first, then searing it right at the very end, which flips this entire problem around. That's genuinely a full video on its own, and it's coming. For today, just know the method you pick isn't a style preference, it's changing the timeline those numbers are running on, where you're actually measuring. Here's a quiet one. Most people who think they hit the number didn't actually hit the number. Stick your thermometer into the fattiest part of the steak or too close to the bone, and you'll get a reading that has almost nothing to do with the actual muscle you're about to eat. Fat and bone hold and release heat very differently than meat does. Stick the thermometer into the center of the thickest part, away from both, every single time. Otherwise, you're not measuring your steak's temperature. You're measuring a temperature that happens to be somewhere near it. Resting. This is the one that trips up the most people, and I get why. You've been standing there smelling this steak for 10 minutes, and cutting in immediately takes real self-control most of us don't have. Fair. But the steak doesn't stop cooking just because the heat's gone. It's still actively rearranging itself. Cut in too early and all the juices you worked for run straight out onto the cutting board instead of staying in the meat. Simple rule that covers almost every case. Rest it for roughly half the time it took to cook. And where you rest it matters too. Rest the steak on a warm plate, tented loosely with a foil. Ensure the foil is not trapping in the steam, as it will make the crust soggy. If you're the kind of person who wants to actually understand your food instead of just following a printout, that's what this channel is for. Hit subscribe, it's free, and it genuinely helps a small channel like this more than you'd think. Here's where the chart's actually been lying to you. All four of those factors have one thing quietly running underneath every single one of them, and it's the part no chart ever puts a number on. A steak does not stop cooking the moment it leaves the heat. The outside is still considerably hotter than the center, and that heat keeps traveling inward for several minutes after the pan is already gone, which means the internal temperature keeps climbing, even while the steak is just sitting there, resting, doing apparently nothing. That's called carryover cooking, and it's the actual reason the number you pulled at and the number you end up eating on your plate are two genuinely different numbers. How much it climbs depends on everything we just walked through. A thin steak cooked fast barely carries over at all, maybe 2 or 3 degrees, 1 or 2 Celsius, because there was never much stored heat built up to travel inward in the first place. A thick steak, especially one cooked more gently, can climb 10 to 15 degrees, 6 to 8 Celsius, after you've already taken it off the heat entirely. Which means if you pulled a thick ribeye at 135 degrees, 57 Celsius, because that's exactly what the chart said for medium rare, you did not get medium rare. You got medium maybe further than that, because that number on the chart was always describing where the steak ends up resting, not where you should actually stop cooking it. So no, the chart was never technically wrong. Every single number on it is accurate. It just never told you that the number is your finish line, not your stopping point. Not a wrong number, a missing one, which is technically lying by omission. Here's the actual number to pull at, on screen now, and it depends on thickness, since that's the whole reason any of this is happening in the first place. For a standard steak around an inch thick, pull it roughly 5 degrees, about 3 Celsius, below your target. For a thicker steak, an inch and a half or more, give it more room, 10 to 15 degrees, 6 to 8 Celsius below target. That's the number the chart never actually gave you. Not because it was hiding it from you on purpose, it was only ever telling you the end of the story, not the beginning of it. Try it on your next steak and tell me in the comments what you were actually pulling yours at before this. I have a feeling a lot of you have been quietly eating medium for years and blaming yourselves for it. And that low and slow method we skipped past earlier, the one that changes this whole equation? That's coming soon. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you want YouTube to actually notify you when it's up. See you in the next one.